Okay, let's look at the database design modeling area. The modeling portion of Workbench is completely separate from the database schema part that we've seen in the previous videos. So this modeling is going to allow us to design a database in a visual way. Once we've designed a model of the database, we can then use it to actually create an empty database. It's called forward engineering, and you can use that model to create that empty database and actually put it in your schema list over here later. But the model and the actual schemas in these lists are two separate things. We could also, before I show you the new model area, I'm going to show you, we could take an existing database from our schema here and create a model out of it. Okay, so if I click here, and this is called reverse engineering. So if I have this visual art gallery, the vArt database, and I go in and I say database reverse engineer, and I go through the defaults here, it's going to have me log in again, my database password, continue, and then I pick that database that I want and continue and execute. It's going to actually open up my model. I'll hit continue, and it will show the tables here in this area. Okay, so let's go ahead and close those out, and I'm not going to save it, but that was called reverse engineering. So you can actually take a live database that you have in the schema and reverse engineer that with the database reverse engineer and actually make a diagram out of one that you already have. Now, if we want to create a model from scratch, you're going to either go to the Home button, click on the models, and click the plus tab here, and that will open up the model tab, or you can go to File, New Model, and it will open up this area. Now, notice you have the new MySQL Model tab that came up, and you can still switch back to the local view, connection view between the two here. Let's begin a new model by double-clicking the Add Diagram icon. You will get a new tab, so now we have 3 tabs open, a new tab showing the EER diagram canvas. You can have a number of these tabs open at once, but it's best to focus on just one model at a time. In this new tab, you can graphically create the tables for your database. Now, it's important to rename the database first of all. It's going to have a default name of MyDB that you can see right here, and if I double click that, I will be able to go ahead and change the name here, and you can type in a new name here. But before I start that, I'm going to show you something that a lot of students have trouble with. If I had been in here, I'm going to close those out, and I had reverse engineered one of my schema lists, and I had the model open. Let me just hurry and bring it back up again really fast. And I had created this ERD diagram. Then I went in and I said File, New Model, and I clicked Save. You'll see, actually even if I don't click Save, you'll see that all of a sudden I have 2 different names here. So if I close this out, and I've got an ER diagram here because I already had that opened, and I click Add Diagram again, I've got 2 different things listed here, vArt and a new MyDB together, because you can have 2 different schemas in one ERD diagram. We don't want that to happen. We're never going to have anything that is that complex. So if that happens and you look over here to rename MyDB and you see another name over here, make sure you close everything out and you don't have multiple ER diagrams here where it shows the add diagram. So I'm going to say don't save, and I'm going to start clear over from scratch, and I'm going to say new model, double click add diagram. I check over here, there's no other name of a database, and at that point I can start a brand new model from scratch. So just something to double check there. We don't want to have multiple schemas in our diagrams that we make in our class. So let's go ahead and go back to where I was before. I double click where it says MyDB to actually go in and rename this schema here. Okay, hold on, I had to close that out because it was opening super funny. Hold on. Okay, there we go. So let me just close that out again. It was opening in a very small window for some reason. I just opened and closed this panel and it came the right way. So if I double click that, I can rename it. I'll call mine store for a new database, and then I can close out that tab here, and then we will see that it now has the new name store. At this point I can begin to place tables onto my grid editor area here. I'll go over a few of the tools here on this vertical toolbar. First we're going to add a table to the model. It's going to be the sixth icon down. It looks like a little table. We're going to click it and then click inside of the grid, and we'll see it defaults to a table called Table 1. If we double click the table, it opens the table editor screen. It does look a lot like the table editor from our schema list, and it works the same way. But remember, once you've created the database through forward engineering, which we'll do here in a bit, you can't come back to this point in the model and on this model tab and change anything in here. It won't change your actual database in the schema list. That's where you'd have to click on the table editor by clicking the wrench icon next to the table. But this is where we're going to build our design, our ERD, and they call it EER diagram, which stands for Extended Entity Relationship Diagram. I'll refer to it as an ERD, Entity Relationship Diagram. So here we're going to name our first table. We can change the name here from Table 1 to Customer. And you'll see as we double click into this first column area, it's going to automatically put the name of the table underscore ID. That was when we went into the preferences earlier. And if yours is named something different without the underscore or something like that, you may need to go back to that video where we changed things in the preferences. Okay, here we're usually leaving primary key as integer. It will automatically pick the first column as primary key, have it be not null. Here's where we may or may not do auto increment, but we'll talk all about that a different time. For now, we're just kind of showing the database or the interface here with models. So let's put first name of our customer. Here we have a data type. Since we know the first name usually is text, could vary. Maybe we would change some of these data types have parens that need a parameter. So maybe we'll say we don't think the first name will be any bigger than 30 characters. We can do the same thing for the last name. And maybe we'll leave that one 45 in case they have a really long last name. You'll notice that there's a little key next to the primary key, open diamonds next to these two. They're not null. If we wanted to require them to have the name, we would click those and they'll fill in with a blue diamond at that point. And that's how we'll add different columns into our table. And then we can close that out and we see now that customer tables show up. Okay, let's see, let's add another table. So we're going to click on the table tool, click inside of our grid again, and this time we're going to go ahead and do the same thing. We'll call this one order, and again we'll double click in here and you'll get an automatic primary key of order ID, which is fine. And we can also put in here maybe a order date this time, and this time we might want to choose, there's a drop down menu here, we can choose some different options here. We could choose a date column. Maybe we want that one to be required as well. We'll put not null, and we could add things like that to that table. Okay, at this point we have two tables on our grid. We can use a non-identifying relationship tool. It's this one right here. It's the dashed line that says 1:n. Because I just happen to know this is going to be a one-to-many relationship. We'll learn about that later. You'll understand more of what it means when we cover entity relationships. But realize in this class we're going to be using this non-identifying relationship tool, the dashed one, most of the time. Let's click on the many side of our relationship first. So customers can have many orders, and so we'll click on the many order part first, and then each customer or each order belongs to only one customer. So you'll see our crow's feet notation shows up now. Clicked on the many part first and then the one part second, and it puts those crow's feet notation between the tables to show the relationship of a one to many visual relationship that we can see here. Also notice we have the foreign key of customer ID that showed up automatically in the many side of the relationship with a red diamond. We didn't have to type that in ourselves. It came over automatically as we made that relationship. Because we changed the preferences, it should be the same name as our primary key over here, customer ID and customer ID. If you didn't get those preferences changed, you would have a table prefix with an underscore in front of customer ID, which makes it kind of long. And it would be fine, you could still use it that way, but it's just a little clearer this way and will be easier to write out in joins later when we do those. All right, so the solid one-to-many line tool here called the identifying relationship will be used only if one primary key relies on another primary key. So this will happen automatically when you have a many-to-many relationship. So let's go ahead and make a many-to-many just so you can see that. I'm going to make one more table called product, and it will automatically get product ID, which will be the primary key, and maybe we'll have the product name and maybe the product price. The name can be character, but let's change the price to decimal. You'll get an error if you try to just leave these parens empty. So you either delete them to take the defaults, or you can say in decimal, in the case of a decimal, we want to have maybe 6 total digits across the front before and after the decimal place, comma, and then 2 just after the decimal place. So we can click that one, and maybe we want those to both be required as well. And we can then have a new product table. This time we're going to use the solid n:(m), which means many-to-many relationship, because I know, and again we'll learn these later, but each order can have many products in it, and each product could belong to many different types of orders. So this time it doesn't matter which one we click on first, they're both mini. But if I click on both of them, you'll see I get an automatic linking table pop up. And you'll see that it has solid lines because the two keys here, order ID and product ID, did come from both of these tables, just like that foreign key did. But this time it's being used as a composite primary key. Because this primary key relies on other parts, other primary keys to create it, it does have the solid identifying relationship. So that's really the only time we're going to see a solid line in most of our ERDs is when we create a mini-to-mini. So let's go ahead and we could actually rename this linking table, maybe order details or something like that. We wouldn't have to rename it if you don't want to. And you could even maybe put something like quantity or something like that in here. Anyway, there'd be lots of other columns in all these tables if it was a true database. But I'm not trying to teach you relationships or one-to-minis or attributes or data types or anything right now. I'm just showing you how the Workbench interface works here. We'll come back later maybe after a few weeks, and you can review this video if you want to get kind of a refresher on making ERD diagrams. In the next video, we'll go ahead and continue from here, and we'll forward engineer this into an empty database, and we'll look at just a few more different things with Workbench, and that will be the final video, the next video.